Yeah. Hey, are we live or what? All right. Let's see what's going on here today. All right. Live on Facebook. Hey, World Guitar Day. That's crazy, huh? World Guitar Day. I don't know what that means. Every day is Guitar Day for me, Joe Satriani. But it's World Guitar Day 2017, and I've got some questions here. Look at all these people asking me questions. This is great. Absolutely amazing. All right. What was going through your mind when you wrote The Forgotten Part 2? That's a great question. Okay, yes. All right. Well, you know, Forgotten Part 2 was written while I was on tour with Mick Jagger. And, you know, that was such an amazing tour. That was, you know, that was the top of the line, the most top of the line tour I'd ever experienced up until then. It was all red carpet and the best of the best every single day. The musicians were the best, the shows were the best, everything was the best. And at night, you know, I'd go back to my hotel room, turn on the TV. This is a long time ago, right? I'd turn on the TV, and there was this program focusing on people starving around the world and how they just needed $1 a day. And I just remember just feeling so bad that here I was living the rock and roll dream with this excess all around me. And then there are these people who just needed $1 a day to stay alive. And it just seemed like everybody'd forgotten about them. You know, when I went about my gig every day, it was one of those things where it really hit hard. And I thought I was moved to write a song right then and there about all the people that are in need that we forget about day after day. I know life is hard and we're all busy trying to stay alive and make things work, but we do have to take care of each other, you know, as much as we can, you know. Okay, Rod Ward, he says, hey, Joe, doing Real Satriani, your second half of Luminous Flesh Giants was just epic. Thank you. Do you have other complete versions? Well, you know, that it's funny, that particular one, that was like the let it be moment of that movie, Real Satriani, because I don't think the guys in the band had been really tuned in at that point to what I was trying to do with that song. And it really needed the whole band to like be very obvious with the transitions of the song. And they were kind of just in that mood that day to just sort of jam on, you know. And, you know, the cameras are there, and I wish I hadn't been there while we were trying to work out something rather difficult. So we did a couple of takes, but there were a couple of times, and you can actually see it on the film, where the tracks we were playing to that were part of the original version that I had done with Eric Valentine were playing in our headphones, and you hear it playing in the movie soundtrack, but the band is actually playing a different section of the song. And I seem to be the only one who recognized that this was happening. That's why the look on my face during the film is not a happy one, because I realize that these guys are not really following the song. They're playing great, but I'm just thinking to myself, well, how am I going to use this? Because it doesn't fit with all these tracks that we were supposed to be following, you know? So I have to say, I know that they filmed us doing a couple of versions, and we have it somewhere, but that would take some investigating, some sort of forensic engineering to figure out if we could pull something from that. But it's a good idea. I'll have to try to find that. No, those missing versions. Hey, Cameron from Australia. All right, what made you choose Glenn Hughes, Chad Smith as your backing for the album? Well, you know, Glenn's amazing. I mean, he just sings, and he's just like, he's 100% musical all the time. He's just like a musical being. It's amazing. He's a fantastic singer, songwriter, great catalyst in any band he's in. And then, of course, his bass playing, I think, is really underrated. I think he's really absolutely amazing as a bass player. Always wanted to work with him. I think we shared the stage once before getting together to record What Happens Next. We were on stage together trying to do Smoke on the Water at the Marshall 50th anniversary. Once we got it started, it was all right, and Glenn, of course, sang it great. Yeah, I was thinking after I got Chad to sign on to do the record. I was thinking, I wonder if he'd be into, getting together with Glenn again, because I know they recorded a couple of records together. And I thought that'd be a cool thing to have a rhythm section that had history together on stage and in the studio. And I was just so happy when they both signed on immediately and said, yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is, it's the first record that Glenn Hughes has ever done where he's not sang. First instrumental record he's ever done. And so that was odd, One of the cool things I did while we were making the record was every time he would be sort of scat singing, over my songs, I'd sort of, write down what he was scat singing. And then later when we were going over little bits and dropping in to fix little bits here and there, I'd say, you sang this really cool thing, over, right in between my melody. Could you play that on the bass? And of course he'd play it right away. And it would sound like he was singing on the bass guitar. It was remarkable. I had so much fun working with him. He's just the greatest. Richard Wallen. Joe, do you ever plan out a portfolio of your artwork? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wish I could. I should go and it's just in the next room, the crazy artwork. I don't know. Scares most people. I love it. And I'll probably at least put together another book soon. This year I focus entirely on canvas, so I've been trying to learn how to use paint and brushes. That's been funny. If you've been sitting here, if you were here watching me paint, you'd be laughing. But I do really like it, and I think I'm getting somewhere with it. And maybe in a decade or two, if I'm still around, I'll get somewhere with it. But yeah, I really would like to kick out a lot more canvases. I was hoping to do 100 this year. I think I'm only up to about 40. So I got to get busy, right? Enough of this guitar playing, right? Okay, so what's next here? Aaron, what do you think is more important when you set you're right. Yes. What's more important when I set up my rig for live performance? This is actually a really great question, Aaron, because um, thing is that, on the one hand, you've got the practical thing, which is like, if you're going to play a song with a wah-wah, then you need a wah-wah pedal. So you got to check your wah-wah and so on and so forth. You need a clean channel for a clean sound, dirty channel for a dirty sound. We all know that kind of stuff. However, it goes deeper than that, right? So I think most of the time you have to set your rig up so that you're inspired, because if you're not inspired to play, you will put out a lousy performance for the audience. And the audience is so smart. They know more, I think, than the performers give them credit for. They're taking everything in. They're looking at you head to toe. They're feeling the vibrations. They're listening to the music. They're looking at your rig. Musicians tend to focus, on their little world. How's my finger feel? Is that G string in tune? Should I bend down and adjust the treble on that fuzz box? We're thinking about the teeny things, but the audience is really taking in the whole thing. And so if you're not inspired, they pick up on that. So I try to get the rig set up so that I'm really inspired to play. Because, the person who's sitting right in front of the Marshall cabinet is just going to get like the top of their head shaved off, right? Because of where they're sitting. There's no way around it. But someone who's sitting, 20 feet to the left is off axis from the speaker. So they're not hearing the same amount of brightness. And then so on and so forth. If there's 5,000 people in the audience, that's 5,000 different mixes of your sound that they're hearing. So you can't mix for everybody. You can't set the controls for everybody. You've got to set them for yourself so that you're inspired to play. Anyway, that's my advice there. Colin Hickey from, is that Redondo Beach? Yeah, I'm scrolling left and right here. Redondo Beach, California. Hey, okay. Have you ever jammed with the Aegis Carlos Santana? And if not, what about a possible G3 tour with him? Yeah, that is a great question. I grew up listening to Carlos, so he's, he's really he's in my fingers, right? As a matter of fact, there's a song on the new record that's got a lot of that Carlos influence on there. You'll hear it once the record starts to come out. You'll start to hear these things. And if I could get Carlos to come out on a G3, I'd jump at the chance. I'm not sure he's into it, but maybe he's watching right now. Hey, Carlos, you want to come out on a G3? Talk to my friend Colin. He'll set you up. Claire Barnes, hi, happy Guitar World Day. Yes. Can you play your favorite ever guitar riff for us, please? Now, my guitar riff of the day is, I don't know, how about... All right, I think it's my favorite of the day. John Luini said, don't play any copyrighted material because YouTube might shut us down or something like that. So I'm a bit confused. It's just to play but not play my own music. So, but yeah, I'm so excited about the new record, and it's all I'm thinking about right now. And that was the first song that we recorded, Energy. Me, Chad, and Glenn. We were so excited about, how that song sort of embodied the idea of how we were going to approach the 12 songs on the new album. So every time I play that, I feel that energy. So yeah, I guess that's my favorite song right now. Jeff Walton. Hey, Jeff, what made you choose your particular style? Well, right off, I didn't choose it. That's just the way I play, right? I can't help that. Let's see. It says, okay. Do you get to a point where it seemed more alive, challenging, and interesting than the usual run-of-the-mill stuff that you heard in style? Well, I think I've mentioned it before that, the solo career was actually quite accidental, right? I've always been in bands with singers. It was always like, we were always trying to be Led Zeppelin or The Who or something like that. And I was working on instrumental material at home, just for personal development. And then one day I decided to just press a record to see what it would be like to start a record company, a production company, and make a record and put it out. And I just wanted to see what it was all about, that process. This goes way back in mid 80s when I was in a band called the Squares in the Bay Area. And the response was so overwhelming. And I started to think, that guy, Joe Satriani, who just put out this really weird instrumental EP, I think that's who I really am. That's the real me, not this guy, being a very professional type musician in the clubs trying to get a record deal. It was a very interesting moment, but it did take me by surprise when we finished, 2 years later, when we finished Surfing with the Alien, that all of a sudden it was racing up the Billboard charts and people were really interested in that record and that music and the totality of it and the statement of it. It was the perfect record to become a huge success because there wasn't a song on there that wasn't a complete truthful mirror of what I felt as a person and as a musician. And so that's why I still love playing all of it today. It's just great. I feel bad for some of those bands that get, popular with the wrong hit single, the one hit wonders. They get this huge success off of a song that doesn't really reflect who they are as musicians or a band, and it kind of cripples their career. But Surfing was just the opposite. It was the perfect record for me. So anyway, yeah, but it's funny, run-of-the-mill stuff you say here, Jeff. Yeah, the music at the time would indicate that the Surfing was the worst kind of record to make at that particular time and to release in late 87 when you look around at the other bands that were popular. So, but that's why you should never listen to anybody's advice or, about what to play exactly. You really do just have to follow your dream and just stick, be conscientious about how you approach your craft and try your best, but don't let people change your vision, James, you're curious about how you name your songs: Borg Sex, Turkey Man, Ice Nine, to name a few. Those are really good titles to pick, James. Borg Sex, of course, was all about how I felt as I was reading a lot of science fiction and watching science fiction movies and television, that they were, in fact, sort of sexualizing the whole thing. There was this fascination and fear of, androids, clones, robots, and then finally Borgs, a whole life form, built around sort of like the fear of mass fear of computers. But then they made these Borg people somewhat sexy. So I thought that was really interesting, that they should just go all the way and make a sort of a sci-fi porn movie about it. If that's really what they want to do, they should just do it. And of course, I'm sort of kidding to myself as I'm imagining this, but I'm thinking that would be kind of funny, wouldn't it? And who would do the soundtrack and what would it sound like, right? To a Borg Sex film. So I started writing that actually on a keyboard, and I sent that to Eric Codieux, my co-conspirator and producer on that record. And he was like, yeah, what is that? It's like, what's the structure of this song? And I was saying, well, imagine there's a female Borg and a male Borg, perhaps, even though there aren't, they're just all Borg, but it's a stretch, right? So, but imagine that there were. How would we, create music to represent the foreplay and different stages of a sexual experience? And that led us down this really funny road of recording in very unusual ways. So anyway, there's Borg Sex. Turkey Man, really, we named it after Mike Manning because during that very same record, we started doing these recordings where I would just sit in Eric's living room where we were recording the whole album, and I would play freeform, and then he would try to build a song around my freeform guitar. Usually it was done at about 1 or 2 in the morning, and the last thing we would do before turning in is we realized that we were starving, and it became my tech, Mike Manning's, job to somehow figure out what he's going to feed us. And he started just buying these large packages of sliced turkey. And so we'd sit around at 2 a.m, eat these turkey sandwiches and say, okay, we'll come back tomorrow and see what we recorded. So Mike Manning became Turkey Man. So that song's for him. And of course, Ice Nine, that goes back to the great Kurt Vonnegut Jr., the novelist who written so many amazing books. And that was a little tidbit from one of his books. But I'm going to ask you guys to just go look that up, because I could talk for hours and hours about Kurt Vonnegut and what a genius he was. Anyway, Bradford Watson from Denver, Colorado. How do you keep it so fresh and inspired all these years? You know what? I just love playing guitar. I love music. I love playing live. I love interacting with the audience. I love doing this. And that's what keeps me inspired. I mean, there's just, you just got to sort of ramp up everything that's good in the world. And this is one of them. If you can do this every day of your life, well, that's pretty good. So not complaining. What's the best advice you ever got in your life regarding guitar technique? This is from Bibash Dash. I hope I said that right. The best regarding the technique. Well, twofold. Number one, you got to warm up. So all these little things like, it's the most horrible sounding exercise ever, but you have to start slow. You got to warm everything up. And this is a really important thing, I think. So, but that's obvious advice, right? Everyone gives you that advice. I think the coolest advice I ever got probably would apply to all musicians. And that came from the great Lenny Tristano, who told me, only play what you want to play. That's like a Zen riddle, right? In other words, don't play any notes that you don't want to play. Only play the notes you want to play. When you think about it, that is the secret of music and life altogether. But attaining that level of musicianship is something that you chase for your whole life. And I still do. And I just keep all of Lenny's advice in my head. I took about 2 months of bebop lessons from him, and when I was just about 18 years old, and it really had a super positive effect on my musicianship and my life. He was a true great. Mike Smith, what would you tell a practicing guitarist with limited time to focus on the most? Very good question, Mike, because students that I used to see when I was teaching, 8 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, they were normal people, and there were little kids, 8 years old. There were people who were 70 and 80. There were race car drivers, doctors, lawyers, carpenters, you name it, as well as professional musicians. And everyone's got responsibilities and jobs and families, and so it is hard to find time to practice. I would always tell them not to get hung up on the scales and the exercises. The most important thing is, remember, we play music for people. That's our job as musicians. And so everything that we practice should help us attain that goal, to be able to play music for people. That's our job. So, that little finger exercise I was doing, you do that for like a minute or two and then put it down. No one's ever going to buy a ticket to see you do any exercise. So don't, why rehearse that, right? So it's better to rehearse this. People will pay to see that. So, and it makes them feel good when you do that. So not when you do this. So that's it's a bit of a humorous way to answer that question, but I think that's a good way to do it. Let's see here. Okay, Charles Caramagno from Clinton Township, Michigan. I don't think I've ever been to Clinton Township, Michigan, but been all over Michigan. What inspires you, or is your muse? Well, I have to say, the music that made by all the people I listen to, they really inspire me. I'm still a Hendrix nut, so I'm still inspired by that. Just the other day, I was trading some tracks I'd never heard of Hendrix with Andy Aladort. You guys know Andy Aladort, amazing guitarist, great teacher, super guy, and cool performer. And he was just interviewing me for Guitar World, and we started again talking about Hendrix. We always talk about Hendrix when we get together, and he sent me some crazy versions of Red House I'd never heard before. And to me, that's what inspires me. I just hear Hendrix, I hear other guitar players, and I think, wow, that makes me feel so great. I want to get in on that. What can I do to sort of make that start in here and get out there? You know, that's truly what it is. And of course, everything else in the world is great. I get inspired by that, and you can't help but reflect all the things that are not cool that are happening around us, and that's, I suppose, our job as artists is to reflect what's happening around us. But I try my best to focus on everything that's positive. Tanner McDaniel says, do you have any plans on releasing backing tracks to all your music similar to? No. No, that's a great question. People ask me that all the time, but you know what? I keep those to myself because I like them so much. So anyway, you know, when Steve first did that, I sent him a funny email just because I thought it was so weird. I sent him an anonymous email and I said, Dear Mr. Vai, thank you very much for releasing your naked tracks. I've re-recorded the melodies and solos, much better ones, by the way, and I'm releasing the album as my next solo album. Thank you very much, you know, Satchmo, whatever. It was just a joke, but it was Steve and I had a good laugh about it because it's a question that goes in our minds. If you release these backing tracks, what's to stop people from just, you know, rewriting them and releasing them? I don't know. I don't even want to get into that. If someone's going to do that, I'm going to make them work for it and build it from the ground up. Gagandeep Curl, he wants to know, or she wants to know, what drove you to drive the song Why? Yeah, this one here. I think I can, without getting sued. Love that groove on that one. Crazy how together Bongo Bob and Greg Bissonette created such a crazy groove on that one. Just amazing. That song was really about sort of asking a, you know, metaphysical question, like why does all this stuff in the world happen? And it was like a plea, you know what I mean? A real question out to the cosmos. Why, you know? And that's why I thought, you know, usually when you're in that state of mind, you stay on track. It's like a prayer, you know, in a way. You don't think of everything. It's not an intellectual discourse. You're actually just focusing on this one thing. So as I approached the song, I thought, you know, I should make sure that the song just keeps going along in this one straight line. It doesn't have any strange bridges or secondary choruses that, you know, change the direction or the key signature, or we're not going to modulate or anything like that, because the song really is a plea to the universe and to everybody listening. Why do these things happen? Yeah. See, you know, you ask me these questions, I go off on a tangent, and I've got all these questions to ask, so sorry. Juan Sanchez Insa from Valencia, when you play songs live, do you think about the same ideas as when you created the songs, or do these ideas change and evolve? Fantastic question. I do actually bring back into my mind and my heart the original inspiration for the song. Like we were just talking about the song Why, that's what I would do. I would, you know, I start the riff, as long as I get that riff going and I know guitars working, amps working, everything's good. And then the outside world kind of fades and I just go inward and I remember the meaning of the song and I let that guide me that night. But it's not like I'm separated from the audience, but I'm sort of becoming that feeling, that original feeling. And then with that in mind, I'm interacting with the audience that particular moment, you know, that night on that stage. That's the only way I can do it. I've always thought in a way that's very unprofessional of me, you know, I should just like be professional, turn on a switch, and just do my job, but I can't. I'm just completely ruled by my emotions, and so the only way I can play is to draw from that and use the power of the emotion and the original inspiration for each song to get me through. That's why I think by the time I finish a song, and my tech Mike Manning will back me up on this, I literally don't know where I am. The downbeat, the last chord of a song, and I'm just like non compos mentis. I don't know where I am. I don't know what song is next. I'm looking around for the set list, and it's because all the blood has just left that intellectual part of me, and it's just all fingers and heart. You know what I mean? I've been trying to correct that for decades now, but I don't think it's going to work. Attila Sulker says, did styles like surf, rock, and players as Dick Dale have any influence on your playing? Do you like this genre of music? When I was growing up, I was just a little kid when that music was around. But it was, playing in the car as I drove around with my older siblings and my parents. It was on the radio. It was the stuff that they played that I just happened to be around for, while it was happening. And so I heard all that stuff from both the UK and the US. And as it distilled down and had vocals added to it, like with Beach Boys. And there were elements of it that I really loved. And I don't think it was because of the genre itself. It was because of individual songs that I thought had something about them that would stir something in me. And because I was so young, I wouldn't really understand it, but it's like when you're 5 years old and you feel something stirring inside of you because of music. You don't have the mental capacity to understand what it is or to even remember it. Even like when I remember now, I just remember the feeling of the moment. I don't really have an intellectual take on why I like this Dick Dale song or some other surf song, or listening to like In My Room or Don't Worry Baby, by the Beach Boys, which, would have been music that my older siblings were listening to, and I just happened to be around while it was playing. But I remember thinking, that's so beautiful. Why is that so beautiful? Why do I feel this way, So yeah, it must have, right? It must have. They paved the way, so they are the pioneers of that style of music. Kyle Everly wants to know, which of your songs do you think has the hardest solo to play? Well, the hard thing about the solos is not so much the solo itself. It's that when you're playing live and you're playing the intro and the rhythm thing, and then you go and you play the melody, and then you play the solo, and then you go back to the melody and the breakdown. That whole thing, song after song for 2.5 hours, that's hard. When you're recording the album, you might put a solo on a song that you recorded 6 months earlier. So you've had time to think about it. Now you've got like the perfect guitar and the perfect amp, and you're sitting there practicing for an hour, and you know that you can do 3 million takes. So is it hard? No, it's not hard work. I think being a kindergarten teacher or a nurse, that's hard work. Playing guitar isn't hard work, right? But there are levels of, comfort, let's say. And so, yeah, I'm always surprised about what becomes hard or difficult, let's say, to do really, really well. And over the years, I've said this to a lot of people, the ballads are the hardest things. The things where there are the fewest notes, where you have to deliver them with the utmost care, are far more difficult to perform than songs like Satch Boogie, which kind of songs like that give you a license to be just a crazy guitar player, and almost any variation is going to be okay, because you're sort of joining this energetic free for all in a way, But if you're playing a song like Crying, it's not a free for all, and plus people have become attached to the recorded versions in a very heartfelt way, and you don't want to spoil that for them by being irreverent with it. So there's this sort of pressure to do ballads right, Roger Daniel says, what gauge strings do you generally have in your guitar? And do they vary from song to song, guitar, guitar? Actually, I was like 9 to 42 forever. You know, I just really like those. Once I started playing with Chickenfoot, though, we dropped down a half step. The strings got too floppy, so Mike and I decided to move up to tens. And so I've stayed at E flat. It was mainly for convenience. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, well, you know, Hendrix was at E flat. Lots of great bands and guitar players stay at E flat. So I've just kind of stayed there. I kind of like the sound of it. Once in a while, I miss, you know, 9 to 42 at A440 is pretty snappy sounding, you know, but it seems like since 2009-ish or something like that, yeah, we made that switch to E flat tuning using 10 to 42. If, you know, if I've got like a guitar set up for slide only, I'll put 11s or 12s on there and I'll raise the action. But that's about it. I don't think I've really changed gauge specifically, you know, like on the JS guitars or maybe on some of my vintage guitars, unless for some reason they're really funky guitars. Some of those vintage guitars are pretty funky and, you know, they only work one way, you know. Milo Skuzny, what are your tips for writing a good melody? Oh, yeah. You know, Milos, right? That's the way you say that, Milos. Milos, edit, edit, edit. That's what you do, right? If you have a melody and it goes, that's not a melody. That's a guitar player having a good time. So there's a big difference there. So if you know, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll make a little recording of the rhythm track and I'll just imagine myself singing the melody that some of the guitar players playing, and I see when I get to that level where I think, well, I wouldn't sing that. That's too many notes, right? So I try to keep it simple enough so that it can really convey the story. Isn't too many notes, isn't too few notes. I mean, that's up to you, really. But definitely, without a doubt, you just, you know, get in there and edit, get out, you know, strip it down. Leave yourself some room for when you go on tour so you can, you know, fancy it up later. Mike Kelly says, if you woke up in the morning and you were the only person left on the planet, do you think your music would change? Well, of course it would. If you knew nobody would ever hear it but you, you know, it's too late for me, Mike. Maybe if I was like 8 years old and I wasn't quite fully formed as a social human being, but, you know, I've been around 61 years now. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised that, you know, every 2 years I put out a record and there's some subtle changes there in the kind of songs I write. But if there was nobody around to listen to it, and I couldn't make more people, I don't know what I'd do. I'd pray that I'd find a friendly robot somewhere or something. I don't know. Marlon Carter, if you could have done one thing differently in your professional musical career, what would it have been? Good question. I think I would not have worried so much. That's what it is. I know that's not a very concrete answer, but think about it. A lot of things we do are based on things that we're worried about, irrational fears. We project into the future like, you know, they're not going to like me because, you know, I'm only so tall, I have no hair, whatever it is that you're freaking out about, the color of your shoes, I don't know what. But you should never worry about any of that stuff because it hasn't happened. So don't worry about things that haven't happened, and just concentrate on what you can actually control, which is the music you play. So that would be my answer. I wouldn't worry so much. Ricky Wildress. Would I say that? I wouldn't say Wild Ruse. I'd say Wildress, right? Ricky Wildress. What's the most odd guitar or instrument that you've played on that you really like? Let me take a look around. Well, there are not any odd ones here in the room, but let me think about that. It's kind of a good question. You know, the guys at Bananas at Large in San Rafael, I don't know if anybody is watching this in San Rafael or in the Bay Area, but Bananas at Large is an amazing store. Alan Rosen just the other day had this uh, boutique builders sort of day, and he sent me a little picture of Neil Sean playing a guitar that looked like it could, seriously harm you or inspire you to write the most amazing piece of music ever. I'll have to ask Neil about that later. But man, they've got some crazy guitars over there. So every once in a while, I'll go in there and I'll get something that's unusual. But I'm usually pretty conservative when it comes to that, only because I've got too many guitars. Okay, I am not in a competition with Joe Bonamassa. I've decided he is the king of the collectors, and so I've been busy the last 10 years actually getting rid of stuff. So I'm trying not to get more stuff. So Ricky, don't tempt me now, Ricky. I'll go out there and I'll be going to Bananas and asking Alan for some weird guitar now. It's all your fault. Eddie Lasco from Wallingford, Connecticut. If you could take one piece of your current stage setup back to 1987, what it would be? Ooh, yeah. Good question. In 87, the whole idea was, how can I tour with rented gear that's showing up all the time, where I pretty much have the same sound night after night. And the way I did it was with a Boss DS1. That was like the most important thing. And I thought, if I have a Boss DS1 and a little Boss delay, I can pretty much pull it off. If somebody gives me a Fender Twin or a Marshall half stack or something like that, I can pull it off. I'll use the clean channel. I'll have enough gain to play Satch Boogie. I'll be able to clean it up to play Always With Me, Always With You. And but of course, the actual reliability of some of those amps was pretty funky, as well as the speakers. And the other thing, more specifically, the problem is always the gain structure of that clean channel, because the DS1, in my mind, sounds great if you have just this very unique level of gain in the clean channel, and you can almost not hear it. It's like the DS1 can detect it, and it behaves according to that gain structure, but you'd be almost hard-pressed to tell if you're just playing straight into that clean channel, if in fact this is the right clean channel for you, to make that box sound like it's a Marshall turned on 10, right? So I think probably it would be that right there, right? I take back my signature JVM 410 HJS, because it's got so many settings. You just dial it right in. It's got a great effects loop. It's quiet, and it's got the noise gate in it. And so, yeah, that's what I would do. I think that's what I would do. Because back in 87, I had my basic guitar. So, yeah, that's it. I don't know why I take these questions so seriously, but it's all your fault. You guys ask really great questions. Okay. Thomas Houston from Elk Grove, California. Who's going to be in your band for the GC 2018? That's a good question there. I don't know yet. Next week, after the Mill Valley Film Festival debuts ZZ's documentary Beyond the Supernova, we're going to play a show. The band that's featured in the film, Marco Miniman, Brian Beller, and Mike Neely and myself. And then after that show, I'm going to make some kind of a decision about what I want to do about the band for next year. So I will let you guys know about that. Daniel Gallifrey, are you touring the UK next year? If so, could you play Raspberry Jam Delta V? Oh, I'd love to play that. That'd be great. And a ton of stuff from Black Swans. Oh, it's your favorite. All right. So he says Black Swans and Wormhole Wizards. It's my favorite album. Fantastic. I'd like to get back to that. Had such a great time making that record. We did it at Skywalker. It's just a wonderful couple of weeks there. It was just really great. I think, our format has always been, when we go out behind a new record, we kind of back off the previous record and the one before that, and then we start looking at the other records that we had previously been backing off of, and we dip back. But it's so hard now because this is record number 16, and we can only squeeze in, if we're doing an evening with show, that means we're only doing about 22 songs in a show anyway. So, I mean, that's not even two from each album. It's really hard to pick. Um, but I'm gonna remember this request here, and maybe we will get to that. Christopher Blackwell from Sydney, Australia. Which album are you most proud of? Are you happy with the finishing touches on what happens next? P.S. Glenn Hughes is an excellent choice as bassist and seriously underrated. Yes, I totally agree with Glenn Hughes. Yeah, I think the truth is that when I finish a record, I don't really finish it, right? I'm forced to abandon it because I've spent too much time and money on it, and so I got to hand it in. And then it takes me a couple of years to go back to the record and to hear it the way you guys hear it, sort of with fresh ears. And I don't think I ever come to terms with them because they're always pieces of work that seemed like I could have used just, if I could have had 15 more years, I could have made that record so much better. But of course, that never happens. So what are you going to do? Drew Wiltshire, your melodies are just like vocal lines. Thank you. I've always wondered if you have lyrics flowing through your mind when you play. Absolutely. If I can get any kind of lyrics to guide the editing process of the melody, that really helps. They're not really singable, when I remember when I was doing Flying in a Blue Dream. I mean, you can imagine somebody singing that, but I didn't want to be negatively influenced by my crappy lyrics. So I wouldn't really think specifically lyrics, but I would think in general, right? Like, oh, there could be somebody singing something here. But if you get stuck on, one particular vocal line, then that may really alter how you write the rest of the melody. And unless you've got just like the most beautiful lyric. And come to think of it, if you did have the most beautiful lyric, then maybe you should just hire a singer, right? So I think ultimately instrumental melodies have to have a quality that go beyond melodies that get vocals, added to or lyrics put to them. They have to have something extra. But it does help. That's a good question. It does help to think lyrically. Vilda Yonak, how long did you practice when you were a kid? How many times per week? Every day. You got to practice every day, even if it's just 10 minutes. You just got to build up muscle memory, even if you're just playing. And you're talking with your friends or something. Just keep those fingers on the guitar and keep playing. Can you guys hear that guitar? I don't know. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, I can, even with this hood on. Tristan Calano from Baguio City, Philippines. I'm just like really ruining everybody's pronunciation here. I'm so sorry. But after learning the pentatonic scales, what should a guitarist learn next? Plus, how do you balance melody and shredding at the same time? Yeah, the balance thing. Every time I play, I'm thinking like, is that balanced? I don't know. You just got to listen, right? But don't be judgmental. Like when you're playing, you just play. Maybe afterwards you can listen to it, or if you have a trusted friend, you ask them that question, if it's sounding balanced. But yeah, pentatonic scales are 5-note scales. For those people who don't follow music that closely, most scales are 7-note scales, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So you've got to learn those scales. The internet is just overflowing with charts and information about all the diatonic scales. In other words, all of those 7-note scales, major, minor, all the modes and everything in between. And I would say, there's a good 15 to 20 that you could play in public and not get arrested in just about any place in the world. And you should learn how to play them and develop an opinion about them, what you think about them. And then when you decide to use them, that becomes your style. That's what people will recognize as you, is your choice of when to use Phrygian dominant or just Phrygian, or when to skip the whole subject and play minor pentatonic, or even fewer notes than that. So Matt Albright, how do you decide on which musicians to play with you on the road or the studio? And has anyone ever turned you down? Well, yes, of course. For instance, G3, we were talking about Carlos Santana earlier. I have asked Jeff Beck many times and never got a yes. For many years, I was asking Eddie Van Halen, who would be just like, wow, Eddie Van Halen on a G3, right? But that never went anywhere. So maybe one day, Eddie, Carlos, Jimmy Page, they'll all come out. I don't know. But picking the people for the band, that's but the studio, for the studio thing, the other thing is I tried to get Brian Eno excited about producing a record for me, and he turned me down twice. So there you go. I guess that'll never happen. I think I envision where I want to go musically. I look at the songs I'm writing and I think, who would be like the greatest guys to play this? And that's really how I decide on who I'm going to ask. And most people are busy all the time, so it can be difficult, to get people to be ready or to say yes to a schedule that you've already blocked out. So like with What Happens Next, we had to move not only the location, but the dates around to be able to take advantage of this little window of opportunity that Chad Smith had on his break from the Chili Peppers. And Glenn was also really busy with Black Country Communion. I mean, they both came in like the night after doing gigs and studio work, spent, 10 days in the studio with me and then went right back out. So, God bless those guys for doing that for me, because it wouldn't have worked unless we could have been very flexible, Carl wants to know, do you read music, and do you feel it's important for modern day rock guitarists to read music? If reading music comes easy to you, I would say, yeah, I can read music. I'm not a great sight reader, but I studied music theory when I was in high school, so I had to learn how to read music. When I was a younger kid, 9 years old, I learned how to read drums. It was my first instrument for a couple of years. So I can't read like Steve Vai's he's a reading monster. But I found that in all the records I've made, almost nobody really wants to see a chart. Everybody's got their own little kind of shorthand that they do, that they like, more than just strict manuscript. So, but I think it can't hurt, but if you think it's really bumming you out, then, use your ears, I suppose. Mike says, Mike from Griffith, Indiana. How do I pronounce your name? Douthit? I think that's what it is. Mike Douthit. He says, who is your favorite guitarist? Well, it's Jimi Hendrix, right? You know that, right? John Murdoch. Any new Chickenfoot tunes or shows on the horizon? Sammy has actually started sending me some lyrics, so I'm feeling really good about 2018. No shows yet on the horizon. But next year, I think it's looking good. Henrik Henriksen is asking me, would you have liked to have continued your work with Deep Purple? If I could have, I would have. But they really sort of borrowed me out of my solo career just as it was really entering a very interesting phase. And I didn't think that I'd be able to really give them 100%. And that's what they needed. They were replacing Richie Blackmore, and they needed someone who was 100%. And thank God they found Steve Morse, because Steve is a genius. Hector Fernandez says, did classical music help you to become such a great musician? Well, thank you, Hector. Yeah, I grew up listening to classical music because my mother played it all the time, in between the jazz that she loved listening to. I think she played classical music while we were little kids because she was sort of indirectly trying to give us some culture as my brother and I would be busy tearing apart the backyard or something like that. She'd make sure we were getting a good dose of the classics. But I love classical music and the all of the different stages. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of years of music that's so different within its own genre, you know. So I hate to just call it classical music, but yeah. Um, there's a great book, by the way, on Beethoven. You should guys go out there and get it. It's this book I was reading on the Unstoppable tour. It's just, you know, it's like that. It's huge, but great book on Beethoven. Gives you great insight into the fact that he was just a human being, and through adversity managed to write some of the most amazing music. Chadwick Spears from Tacoma, Washington. Which of your students went on to become the most famous? I don't know. Probably Kirk Hammett, maybe. I mean, he is in Metallica, and they are like huge, right? So I don't know. Someone's asking me here, Metallica or Megadeth. I'll leave that up to you. Charlie Hallaberry, which album do you rate as your most inventive? I think Crystal Planet is your most inventive album to date. Well, thank you very much, Charlie. You know, funny thing about that record, no one ever asked me about, and I put a lot of work into it. Each song comes on in the sequence in an ascending key. I thought that was like the coolest thing. And when I put out the record, I was just waiting for someone to say, hey, Joe, I noticed what you did. That's so interesting. And nobody did. So there you go. But I'm glad you like that record. I had such a great time making that record. And there's so much great playing from Stu and Jeff on that record, and the influence that was felt. You know, it was an album that had both Mike Fraser's obviously work and as a producer and engineer, and John Cuniberti as well, and Eric Valentine. I mean, it had so many people contributing such great stuff, along with Eric Codier doing all that crazy editing. So fun record. Benny Richard from Auckland, New Zealand. Do you like Steely Dan? Well, of course, everybody likes Steely Dan. Yeah. Their music was always on when I was in high school. So yeah. Jerry Peters from the Netherlands. I seen you live 2 times now, and that makes me wonder, do you have any warm-up routines before you go on stage? Yeah, I like to play, you know, like sometimes. Like I'll play a simple song while a million people are coming up to me saying, Joe, would you sign this? Oh, you got to meet this person over here. Did you make sure? Can you approve that we're doing this? And can you do that? It's chaotic backstage, you know. And every once in a while, someone will leave the room, and I'll just get busy going, you know. And then all of a sudden, somebody says, you got 3 minutes. You know, you got to go on. So I just try to play, but I don't try to peak. You know, that's the important thing. I don't try to be like totally amazing. I keep saying, save it up for when you walk on stage. That's what people have sacrificed their whole lives to come to see you play this night. Whatever you do, do not blow your wad backstage, then walk out there saying, oh, hi, everybody. I've already played my best stuff, and now I just like to sit back. Pipe and slippers time. No, 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 no. Just warm up. Save the energy and hit the stage and become, you know. And yeah, you know, I do some stretching, maybe a couple of push-ups, you know, nothing too heavy. Marco Bokjovic, what do you think is the coolest guitar you own? All right, let's have a little contest right now. This one? Don't go anywhere. This one? This is taking too long. This one? I don't know. How do you know? How do you decide? I love them all. I've got some old guitars, but like I said, I'm trying to sell some of them because after the magic is sort of gone with the vintage guitars, you know, your own personal magic, I always feel like you should give it to somebody else to play to create some magic on it, you know. And it's hard to let them go, though. I got a beautiful 69 maple cap Strat sitting at Bananas at Large right now, and every day I think I should go back and pick that up instead of selling it. But you know, I used it, I recorded it, but I think I'm over it. You know, I get over those vintage guitars for some reason. I never get over these. These, you know, these JS guitars make me play everything, which is really great. That's what I love about them. But the vintage ones, they you know, you like them and then it's over and you got to get rid of them. So there you go. Joe Ledbetter, how do I begin to learn soloing techniques? I've been playing 15 years on and off. I can hear what I want in my head, but how do I get my fingers there? Yeah, that's tough. Play the slowest solos you can think of. That's the only thing I can think of right there. I mean, not everybody solos the same way, right? I mean, if you really can't put different soloists together and say one's better than the other. You really can't. It's just really what they're trying to convey and the magic that they're able to create with the notes that they choose. So on the one hand, you may say, I have to use a million notes to convey this message. Or you might say, no, I'm just going to play 5 and that's going to do it. That's case by case, song by song. So as a player dedicated to, you know, maximizing your full potential, of course, you want to see how good are you at playing a few notes and selling the song that way. And if the song does require a million notes, are you capable of playing them? So that means practice, doesn't it? So yeah, I guess that's the answer to that. Mark Watt says, what are your top 3 favorite albums? Oh, I hate questions like that. You know, I'll say I can't answer that, but I can tell you what I listened to the last couple of days. I was listening to Mike Keneally's last record, totally insane. TV on the Radio, their latest record, also very unique record. And I went back and I listened to Hendrix, Bandit Gypsies live at the Fillmore. So right now, maybe they're my favorite records. I don't know. Stuart Kennedy, what do you like to do apart from playing guitar? I don't do anything apart from playing guitar. I think you can see that, right? That's all I do. They lock me in this little room with a computer, and that's all I do. Chris, what artists have you been listening to in 2017? Well, I mean, first of all, my friends are putting out amazing records. So I would argue that Glenn Hughes's solo record is something you have to get and listen to, and you'll fall in love with it. That's easy. Galacticon, Brendan Small's new record. Come on, Galacticon 2. You got to listen to that. That is amazing. Don't let that guy fool you with his crazy guitar playing. That guy is an insane vocalist, absolutely insane. It's scary just knowing the guy. I mean, he's insane. So yeah, I can name those 2. I mean, Tony McAlpine. Oh my God, have you heard his new record? That record is insane. I listened to his guitar playing and I'm just like, how does he do that? It's just beautiful. It's so intense, and yet it's so beautiful at the same time. So I would recommend those right away. And go get them. Go get them right away. Go to her. Okay, so Raven Eye too. I can't forget Raven Eye. I mean, their EP, I think, just came out maybe a month ago, or less than a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. Go seek out Raven Eye. Those guys are an amazing live band, and they're amazing. Okay. Bhargav Kodri, do you still get adrenaline rush on stage? I have so much adrenaline before I go on stage because I'm basically shy, and as you can tell, because I'm wearing glasses and a hood, even though it's just a, you know, Facebook Live, but it's just the way I am, right? So yeah, it's a hard thing for me to manage that. And if you eventually, our documentary Behind the Supernova that my son Zizi, it's just finished. It's going to be at the Mill Valley Film Festival on Friday, next Saturday. I mean, October 14th. That really shines a light on that part of me that maybe I never used to tell people about, but you know, people who know me, you know. They know about that. So yeah, full of adrenaline, but I love it. I love it. Jay Ayero, he says, would you consider making a classical album using classical guitar? I can't really play that stuff, so no, I wouldn't. Ian Welburn said, you've done a lot of teaching in the past. Is passing it on still a passion of yours? Of course. I think that is really important. And We still, arrange lessons now and then for contest winners for charities and things like that. I think it's a cool idea, but it's really time consuming to teach, and to be really effective as a teacher, it's great to see a student every week, for a couple of months. But if you can't do that, come to the G4 experiences that we put on once a year. I think they're really great. We've really hit on a technique of giving as much information and inspiration together in a really interesting blend, along with performance and a friendly atmosphere. So I think it's pretty amazing. I know I'm coming to the end of this. I know someone will come. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg will come and shut me down because we've been on for an hour. So I will leave you with... See you guys. Thank you very much.